Today we have the opportunity to speak with Felix Catheline, who I've known, um, since 1993, 94, coming up on 30 years. Um, Good friend of mine, that maybe distance has um, affected the frequency that we see each other, but has definitely not affected my um, care for him. Got to play with you as a teammate, and then watch you as um, a player after I left, and then share some similar experiences in terms of coaching and teaching. Um, so it's good to have you on, and looking forward to the conversation and get a little background with you. Um, Felix is a guy that has many depths to his personality and things that he's experienced. So, it's always good to have people that you know on, and um, people that you care about, and especially have some linemen on as well to kind of feature and highlight.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. I appreciate it, guys. I really appreciate you guys having me on, and from someone that really looks back on my time in the Valley, and what you guys are doing on this podcast is really fantastic. So I'm really just happy to be a part of it.
It's always good to get another viewpoint and perspective. For me being a city school kid and getting to, expand my knowledge base about what SVC football is, and what that experience was like for different guys at different times. I'm excited to sit back and listen and hear how your career went, and then how your journey has progressed as a teacher and a coach. So I'm super ecstatic to have you on today. So thank you.
Yep, no problem.
hey, so Felix, maybe talk a little bit. We always talk a little bit about the background and what kind of propelled you into um, athletics, football. Obviously, our common experience that Ursuline has kind of brought us to this point. What was kind of um, your first introduction to athletics? You were a lifelong West Sider till you went to college, right? Um, and there's always a choice between Cheney or Ursuline at that time. Maybe give us a little bit of background about your upbringing and what took you to where you are today.
For sure, yeah. I grew up in West Side, Youngstown, Ohio, in Cornersburg, right out there in Louisa Reed off of Shenley. Went to St. Christine's and played football for West Catholic. Bill Conway and Tony Treghese were my coaches going up through fourth all the way through eighth grade. And then, you bring up that West Side connection. I was actually, my cousin Jennifer and I were the only two people in our family to go to Ursuline. The majority of people from my family went to Cheney. A couple went to Rand and South and Wilson. But my cousin, who graduated with you or a year older than you, I can't remember.
A year before me.
Yeah, she went. She went to go play basketball, and then 2 years later, when it was my time, I ended up deciding to go to Ursuline and play football. I think the biggest influencer for me at that time, being at St. Christine's, because it's interesting too when you talk about like where kids end up where. I assumed that pretty much everywhere was like Youngstown, and when I moved down to Columbus, I was fairly wrong on that assumption. But being at St. Christine's was different because half my class ended up going to Mooney, half my class went to Ursuline. A couple kids even ended up at Fitch. A couple kids ended up at Cheney. But what kind of did it for me, I remember going to a couple functions as an 8th grader for Ursuline and listening to Coach Angle talk. And, I remember, I think it was Robin Hanna. I was a freshman coach at Mooney at the time, too. He was good friends with my mom. And they talked to me about maybe going to Mooney. But I don't know, man. I kind of gravitated to Coach Angle. A lot of my decision making in terms of my career path is influenced by Coach Angle, and I think that was it. Yeah, just and honestly, it's interesting too, because I think if I'd have went to Cheney, I had a great experience as well. So it wasn't a good or bad choice. It was a good and good choice. I mean, I think at that time in the late '90s, Ursuline was doing good, but Cheney was really humming, and I'm blessed and I'm thankful that I ended up going the route I did. But I don't know Coach Burtis well, but I know him well enough to know how much of a great man he was. And, for the last 20 years being in coaching, it's interesting because, when you talk about just Mahoning and Trumbull County, it's like how many people I run into now in my 40s that played football there. And you hear some of these names of guys that coached back then and just what kind of amazing people they were. And that's something I think that, gets lost in coaching, gets lost in high school sports now too, especially with the explosion of NIL and kids just trying to get scholarships and stuff, is the mentor side of it. We were really blessed, I think, to come through Youngstown the time we did, and the people that were head coaches back then at Ursuline, at Cheney, at Mooney, at Fitch, Warren, JFK, a lot of different places. We were really fortunate. But yeah, that was the biggest thing. That's what got me to Ursuline was Coach Angle. Just being around him as an 8th grader and listening to him, talking. I was a feeder school kid, so you can't call it recruiting. It's not like he was, making door visits and stuff like that. But yeah, it was a big influence for me. Leaving St. Christine's and then being at Ursuline in '93.
It's funny you said, Burtis and Coach Angle, who I had the experience of being under both of their tutelages in different aspects. And, and let's be honest, right? There was always a rivalry between those two schools in terms of, who's better or, recruiting. But the funny thing that I always noticed was how similar they were.
Yeah.
Right. And I think sometimes, a rivalry is between two people who have similarities. And I mean, the programs were mirrored in terms of getting in the weight room, the toughness aspect, what you ran and how you imposed your will on people, and the mentality. So, I just wanted to make that note. Like it's really mirrored programs.
Yeah.
And so during that time, in the Catholic school leagues, right, that was at the time where you had multiple schools on a team. So like West Catholic would have been St. Anne's, St. Joe's, St. Brendan's at the time.
Yeah. So St. Anne's, St. Brendan's, St. Joe's, St. Christine's. I think that might be it. I can't. St. Joe's of Austintown. Yeah. I think that's probably it. Yeah.
And then you played, Northeast Catholic, Trumbull Catholic, South Catholic, maybe.
Yeah,
which
South,
would have been
South Catholic and South Central were those two schools were the feeders for Mooney that got broken up. I think St. Charles was South Central and St. Dom's was South, and then Northeast Catholic was the other main feeders that went into Ursuline. I still remember to this day, and it's funny because Sean Conway, one of my best friends, I graduated with him. He was over my house this past week, and we were reminiscing. And after he left, I just, once you go down that path of reminisce, you just start thinking of all these memories. I'll never forget being in 8th grade and playing Northeast Catholic, and who later became one of my best teammates and actually coached with me years later. I'll never forget trying to tackle Sean Penny in 8th grade. And I mean, literally, it was like I was a young boy and a grown-ass man just ran me over and stuck his cleats in my chest. Yeah, I just that was my first, I think, eye-opening instance of of what, how good football was in the Steel Valley at that time, trying to tackle Sean Penny. So.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to play with Sean. I think I was in 8th grade. He was a 7th grader. Yeah, and then fast forward, right? You guys were a year behind us. He was a man.
Yeah.
He was a player.
Yep.
When you start reminiscing and talking about some of those beginning parts of your football experience, if you think back for a moment, what are those main characteristics that stand out for your era of coming up in Youngstown and getting involved in playing football?
I think the common trait is just toughness. What the Steel Valley was producing, and I don't mean the Steel Valley Conference, I mean Mahoning and Trumbull counties. What they were producing back then was just a really fierce, tough athlete. It's funny too, because I think, when I talk to some of my students or some of my athletes about, people they look up to or idolize, obviously a lot of time, and I'm sure we were the same way when we were their age. You kind of gravitate towards, who's the best player at Ohio State right now, who's the best player in the league right now. I remember growing up in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade and just being awestruck by people like Mike Narducci and Jason Rock, guys that were linemen when I was in junior high. Or I remember going and watching Cheney, I think, play Fitch, and watching Sylvester Patton just destroy people and just be totally like, back then, I think in local lore, like I think that ended up breeding just toughness through each generation, each class that came through. And it's still talked about. I think during that time, and I know it's still, that area is still doing really well in football, but man, late 90s and early 2000s and early 90s, really the entire decade, you look at those football teams and the English brothers from Osdown Fitch back in 1992. I mean, like, just tough dudes. And yeah, I think that, to answer your question, that was the common characteristic. I was 5'9", 255 pounds. I wasn't chasing down any D1 scholarships, but I like to think, and I think I got that feedback from a lot of my opponents back then, that I was a pretty tough guy. And then guys that I played up against, Mooney and Bourbon, guys that were just tough. Some were huge. Some were guys that went on to play D1, but regardless of how big, fast, and strong you were, if you were on the field on Friday night and playing in one of the local Youngstown schools, you were tough. I think that is something that really was bred through the community. And you talk about just being a blue collar town and being the Steel Valley and the steel mills and all that stuff. And I think that's one of the biggest blessings I got coming out of Youngstown, is just it taught me how to be tough. And different trials and tribulations and challenges I faced later in life, I think I was able to really push through that for a lot of reasons. But one of the greatest gifts God gave me was just making me come from Youngstown and teaching me how to be tough.
Now, I agree with a lot of the things that you said in terms of the characterization, because part of it is until you get into that later part of your career, you don't really have an idea if you have a true avenue to go on to the next level and continue playing. But I think a lot of boys from our time and our era, we use that as a measuring stick for where we were at in our own development, and just kind of figuring out some of those pieces of manhood that you haven't ascended to yet. Did that carry you beyond the high school experience and into your adult life, as far as like some of those lessons and battles, those wins and losses that you faced, coming up as a football player there?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, not even in my adult life, the second I left Youngstown and being a freshman at Wooster and trying to play college football, I remember we brought in a huge recruiting class, and every day at football camp, guys just dropping like flies, man. And I know it was because I played football at Ursuline and I was a product of Youngstown that I stuck it out. It's just, and some of it was just like, I didn't want to go home early. Like, I didn't want to be that dude that like left for football camp, and then like a couple days later, people were like, "Oh, what are you doing back?" It's like, it just wasn't for me, And I think that was a lot of positive peer pressure back then too. And also then later in life, ended up losing my stepfather when I was in high school. Lost my father my senior year of college. But again, I think a lot of those mental toughness things that were ingrained in me, from Youngstown, from Ursuline, things that Coach Angle kind of mentored in me, really came back to help me out later. And in my coaching career, it's something that I try to impart, to the youth now is, you know, it's easy to feel great when things are going well, but when you start hitting that adversity, I think of our coaching staff, Dallas, when we played at Ursuline, and just some of the words that got beaten in my brain over and over and over again: adversity, adversity. Roland Smith in the middle of the weight room, you're doing a circuit training, and you're gonna die, and you just hear him like, adversity, let's go, adversity. Just those lessons, and how they've impacted me as an adult. Like, yeah, I think my life would have been a lot different in not a good way had I not had those men in my life showing me the way. And now, as I'm a teacher, I teach at Columbus West High School currently, and I coach football and wrestling at Bishop Watterson. I see how some of the youth miss out on that because they don't have those people in their lives, and that's what and to answer your question even further, that's what gravitated me to coaching. I think to see what those things did for me and helped me become a man and overcome adversity, and I want to make sure I'm able to try to teach those lessons to kids now.
So let's talk a little bit about your time at Ursuline in terms of, you would have came in 1993.
Correct. Yeah.
Right?
My freshman year was state semifinal loss to Wauseon.
Yep. I remember that.
Yeah.
And then so as you transition up and start, becoming a varsity football player, and what was your time at Ursuline like, navigating yourself through that, from being a sophomore and kind of finding your way, and then, junior and senior year, finding your place?
So for me, it was a great journey, and it's a lot of examples I get to use with my athletes now. Freshman year, you don't know anything. I remember being in the locker room. We had 16 guys on the freshman team, and quite a few guys really our whole team was West Catholic and Northeast Catholic, and meeting guys like Mike Eccles and Sean Penny, and just the great impression that they put on me, and the guys that were coming from St. Christine's and St. Brendan's, and then moving on to sophomore year, being on the scout team, getting your butt kicked every day, but really understanding what grit meant. And I think at the time I weighed 180 pounds soaking wet, and I'm getting blasted every day by guys like you and guys like Wolford and all those guys, and then junior year is actually, it's a coaching lesson that I we tell our kids all the time. You are one play away, right? You're one play away from playing. And I'll never forget my junior year, I was your backup. I don't mean to bring up bad memories, but it's just, again, it's a life lesson. Yeah, I'm your backup, and you're an all-state defensive tackle. And I was not ready to play varsity football. I was a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, but I was definitely, as a junior, I was a year away from really being a contributor. And being your backup on the defensive line was great because I got to learn from you, and I got to learn from Coach Nora, as crazy as he is. And Wolford and all those guys, and Frasco, and kind of, I think where I was as a junior, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to be the understudy, I'm going to be the backup, and when these guys graduate, I'm going to step in and I'm going to fill their shoes, and we're going to have a great 1997. And then I think it was week 4. Who were we playing? It was week 5. Who were we playing? Was it John Marshall?
John Marshall.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Week 5, just chilling on the sideline, looking up in the bleachers, trying to make eye contact with a cute girl, and you get hurt, and I go in. At the time, we don't know how bad it is, so I finish the game. They're not very good, and then find out on Sunday, like, yeah, you really banged up your knee, and you're probably done. And I'll never forget that next week of practice was like, it was probably the scariest I've ever been as a teenager. I mean, we're playing Fitch week 6. It's a pivotal game for us. I'm doing my best not to screw up. I have Coach Joe Norris, my assistant coach, who loved to yell, and I love Joe. I love Joe to death. Again, I'm very blessed to have had him as a coach. But you and I both know he's crazy, and I was at the point where I was just so like wound tight. And I'll never forget Thursday walkthrough before he played Fitch. Like Coach Engel actually yelled at me, and he's like, "You've been walking on eggshells all week. Just play football." And that helped. Like that helped a lot. And then going out and surviving, and having Mark Wolford right next to me, talking to me throughout the game, calming me down. That was a big help. But yeah, I tell my kids all the time, like it's not a cliche. Like if you have goals and you're not meeting those goals and you're not exactly where you want to be in the program, but you're still working hard and you're doing all the right things, you're always one play away. And that happened to me. Week 5 through 11, I ended up starting because you got hurt. And I think we were friends before then, but I think in a weird way for me, we became even better friends because you were almost like my Yoda those last 6 weeks, because again, I was terrified. I was like, holy crap, I'm the starting defense tackle at Ursuline right now. Like, I don't know if I could do this. And like, you would Coach Nora would chew my ass out, and then I'd come over and you just talk to me and calm me down. And that was a wild ride. And then later that year, I remember, I think it was week 8 or 9, we had to go down here to Lancaster. And I remember you telling me, I was like, all right, man, there's this offensive guard, Ben Gilbert, right? Was that the guy's name?
That's the guy's name. That's his name. He's a tackle.
Yeah, he's a tackle. Yeah, he's like, he is the biggest monster I've ever played against. And just like, I remember going into that game and just being terrified, and then lining up on the first play. This dude is 6'6", 310 pounds, going to Ohio State. And I remember looking up at him because I'm like 5'8.5", maybe 9. I mean, the program, I'm 6 foot, right? But let's be real, I'm 5'9".
Yeah, right.
220 pounds. I look up at this dude, and I'll never forget that first play. And you had done such a great week. You had done such a great job that week, helping me out, calming me down, like, but being realistic. Like, dude, this guy's a monster. First play of the game, looking up at him and just seeing this massive human being, and I don't know what it was, but it was like the tiniest head on the biggest giant that I've ever seen before. And it immediately like calmed me down. I was like, all right, okay, I'll be all right. And then, for 6 quarters, because it was a double overtime game, I ended up just bear crawling into the dude's shin like all night. And we ended up coming up and winning that game. And yeah, man, that was a wild memory.
Well, it's funny you say that, because that was context for Ron Allen. My junior year, we played Boardman, who had a monster line, right? And played well against them. And so I'm thinking, I'm good if this is the best line we're going to see. And then so we play Lancaster, and what, Felix, we lost to him
like 15-7, like real close.
No, it was a safety difference.
Oh yeah, like 9-7. Yeah.
So, and this kid goes to start 4 years at Ohio State, Ben Gilbert. I think he plays for the Rams for 3 or 4 years.
Yep.
Just legit.
Yeah.
But, I'm sure, Ron, you've come across some guys that are NFL caliber guys that they're just different human beings.
When you say that, it gets me to thinking the area that we come up in, we play in such close proximity to our neighborhood teams or our regional teams. It's a shock to the system when you get that first experience, or you get that first realization that you're going against someone who's better than you, or more prepared than you, or more talented than you. But you got to find a way and have a knack to keep going and endure anyway, and take the lesson from that. So when you say that you bear crawled into this guy's shin all week, you're doing the best that you can for the moment. But once you get over that hump of facing a guy like that, what's that do for your own self-confidence in those situations?
Absolutely. Like, and just what Dallas was talking about there, like that Boardman offensive line was really good, but it was a lot of MAC players, guys going MAC. And then and Ben Gilbert, like 4-year starter, Ohio State, like dude was just a freaking monster. But I'll never forget like getting through that, surviving that game, and then the next year as a senior, I was starting at defensive end and guard, and that was a really awesome video you guys put together. But the Boardman game, Mike Bogner was an offensive tackle, and he was highly recruited. He was the last one from that Boardman because like he started for 3 years, and every dude before him graduated. That one guy, he was the head coach at Maryland for a minute. He got in a lot of trouble. What was his name? Do you remember?
Durkin.
Yeah. Durkin was that crew and everything. And like Bogner was the last one. And he had a lot of hype and everything. And I'll just like, I remember going to that game and be like, dude, watching film, you're not Ben Gilbert. Like I went into that game my senior year against Boardman, not nervous at all. Like first play, like we first time it was just me and him one-on-one. He's a good football player, and he got me a couple times, but I got him a couple times. I just remember we made that first contact, and I was like, "This is not like." To your point, Ron, like this, like I have faced the biggest mountain, and after you get past that challenge, you start seeing like, yeah, these guys are good. I'm gonna respect them, but like that's not that dude, and now your confidence starts to grow, and going even back to the first question you asked me too. Those challenges I faced, playing football at Ursuline, helped me immensely in college. I played Division III at the College of Wooster. I ended up starting 2.5 years defensive tackle, and even my freshman year, like once I got through football camp, I played with and against some really good guys. But in the back of my head, I kept saying like I'm from like these aren't. And I'm not trying to be in any way, shape, or form disrespectful to Division III football or the people I played against or with, because great football, tough dudes. But when you go up against somebody that good, and now you're playing at Worcester at the Division III level, it gives you confidence because you can. You can compete. If you can survive against this dude, or you can win some battles against that guy, and this kid went to Bowling Green, and that guy went to Miami of Ohio, and this dude's starting 4 years at Ohio State. Now, when you continue your football career in college, it gives you a sense of confidence that I belong, that I know what I've done and I know who I've gone up against. And that's why I tell my kids all the time. And I was just having a conversation with a coach about this past week, is if you want to play sports at the next level, if you're dedicated and you work hard, there is a place for you. And even if you're getting your butt kicked in high school, you have to sometimes see the forest through the trees. Like, who are you playing against? Like if you are like, even look at today in 2024, some of the schools down here in Columbus and the OCC are out of this world. And if you're some kid that's starting right guard at Reynoldsburg High School, and you guys are struggling, but who you're struggling against? You're struggling against Pick North, Gahanna, Pick Central, like programs right now that are sending kids off to NIL deals. Well, if you love the sport, just keep grinding, man. There's going to be an opportunity for you down the road. And I think, battles with guys like Ben Gilbert and, the crew from Boardman and guys from Mooney, like that's what taught me that. And I hope I can, continue to convey that message through my coaching as well.
I think one of the things that we had the benefit of at Ursuline and at Cheney for that matter, right, was that you had really good players up and coming. And to your point, right, iron sharpens iron,
yep.
Right? So you're going against tough guys at practice. And if you were a one-way guy, you were on the scout team. And talking about Ben Gilbert, right, like that was, and you said it, it's a bear fight.
Yeah.
And what happens when you fight a bear? Sometimes you get the bear and sometimes the bear gets you.
Yeah.
And that was the thing for me, was like I based my whole offseason on, okay, you know what? I'm going to see what I'm made of.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm going to see what type, because I knew he was the best player I ever played against, and I'm going to see what type of player I am. I'm going to lean into that challenge,
right.
And so you had that experience your junior year.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, I hope that I was a source of, because I always wonder this, right? You get a little older, you get a little more reflective, and I hope that during that difficult time, because that was a tough time for me.
Absolutely.
I hope that I was a supportive person for you, because I tried to be as best I could be.
You were literally an extra coach And literally that's what I needed at the time. Because if I didn't have you in my ear, balancing me out, I think I would have struggled a lot more.
Yeah.
You know.
And so then, and Ron, that was a triple. That's the game that Coach Angle says was the greatest high school football game of all time, triple overtime. Did you guys go down there and spend the night in Lancaster?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was a triple overtime game. I think Sean Penny
Uh,
caught a touchdown at the end of the game
Yeah.
to win it or something like that.
He ran a wheel route, I think, out of the backfield to tie it up. But there's a play in that game that, I mean, he was going to get recruited, but like that bumped his stock so much. We're running off tackle blast, and he hits the pile. And it's the smoothest thing I've ever. And he's huge. Like he's 6'1", 210, 215, 220. He hits the pile, and any normal running back would go down. And he almost did like a seat roll on the pile, posted on his hand, kept his feet, and then took off for 60 yards for a touchdown. Yeah, that game's something special. I don't have the film for that game. If I had it, man, I would sit down and watch it right now because Coach Engle's right. That game was out of this world. And going back to you, not only were you helping me, calming me to play defensive line, but I was also the backup snapper. And so every touchdown we scored, I had to go out there for PAT, and you would say, "You're going to be fine. Don't screw up." I'm like, "Okay, all right, I'm going to be fine. Don't screw up." Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was wild.
Yeah. So it's how did that experience propel you into your senior year, right? Because now, and this is one of the things that I think is different in today's game is you see so many freshmen and sophomores really getting time and not sure why, whether it's training or just enrollment being down or whatever, or athletes are better, I don't know. But you see this so often, and usually in high school back in our days, it was that junior and senior year, that 2-year picture that was kind of, except for that small percentage.
Right.
How did that kind of propel you into your senior year?
I mean, it just gave me confidence. I remember if it wasn't for how my junior year played out, being thrown into the fire like I did, having you as a friend and a mentor to help pull me through that, that whole experience, man, it set me up perfectly. Coming into my senior year, we graduated a ton of linemen. Bernie McGinnis and I were the only two guys coming back that had any playing time whatsoever. We still had Eccles. We still had Penny. We had a lot of good pieces and parts in the skill position, but yeah, we started Brian Rosen at center. He was a sophomore. That's like, and again, a sophomore starting at Ursuline back then is freaking unheard of, but we were so thin on the line that that experience and going through those trials, I think really set me up for my mental toughness and to be a leader my senior year. And I'll tell you what, the other side of it too, and I'm glad you brought that up because it's something I've been thinking about right now. I teach at Columbus West. I'm the defensive line coach at Watterson, but my main thing at Watterson right now is I'm the head wrestling coach, and I've been there for 7 years. The last 2 years, we finished 4th in the state. This year coming up, there have been some divisional realignments. So the big dog in Division II, St. Paris Graham, who's won like 26 consecutive state titles, they've dropped down to Division III, and now we are kind of the front runner possibly to win a title in Division II. And we have a lot of work to do, so it's not a foregone conclusion. We got some good rivals in Columbus DeSales, Cincinnati LaSalle, a couple other schools that are going to push up, Medina Buckeye. But this thing that you're talking about, because I have kids coming in right now as freshman wrestlers that are competing to be 4-time state champions. And it's a conversation I have with my coaching staff is how do we convince these other kids to stay off of the program? Well, those guys that are studs, those Diallo Andersons, those Sean Pennies, those guys that they're playing their freshman year, they're not going to be there forever. And if you can grind it out for 3 years and then wait for your moment to come and then seize it, that's what that taught me at Ursuline. Is I'm a freshman that doesn't know anything. I'm a sophomore that gets my butt kicked. I'm a junior that's a backup and was really going to be a backup all year and was going to be fine with it until unfortunately you got hurt. And then my senior year was my time to step up. I think that's lost today with a lot of kids and a lot of programs that they don't understand the value of playing freshman football, playing JV football, hitting the weight room really hard, develop. And then maybe not until your senior year, but when that time comes, You got to seize the opportunity. And that's something that we're working through our wrestling program right now. Because I have some kids that are really, really good wrestlers, but in our lineup, they're stuck behind kids that are trying to be 3 or 4 times state champions. So they may not see the mat until they're a senior, maybe even a junior. And when I get a kid that buys into that concept, though, it gets me excited as a coach, because that's a program kid. That's a kid that trusts the process, that understands what you're trying to build and what you're trying to do. It brings me back to stuff that Coach Engel used to yell at us all the time about. There's nothing more important than the program. I'm not more important than the program as head coach. You're not more important than the program as, starting defensive tackle, starting tailback, whatever. There's nothing more important than the program. And when you get kids to really buy into that concept of just keep grinding, your opportunity will come. And while you're grinding, do everything you can for the betterment of the program and the team. I mean, that's why I coach. And I really feel like when you find environments like that those are places that really, really breed success. In football, you're only going to have 7 state champions every year, 7 divisions, right? But there are tons of places that operate that way. That it's just a successful environment because they believe in those statutes and those principles.
When with you having that firsthand look at what kids are like now in this day and age, and comparing that to the error and the expectation and the level of ascension that we went through, the difference is we kind of toiled in anonymity until you had a chance to prove yourself. And now, kids can stitch together bits and pieces of footage, film, drills, or what have you to self-promote. As a coach and then a former player, how do you view that, that kids have so much access to put themselves out there? And do you feel like they shortcut the process in any way? Or do you feel like we were just, caught in a product of our times? Would you want to have what the kids have these days, or would you do it the same way you did it in Ascension and getting to the places that you got to?
Right. I think it's a blessing and a curse. I think when it's used right, it's great for the kids to promote themselves. I think it's a curse in that, it gets athletes to focus way more on the individual than the team. And no, I would not want to have this type of access when I was 18 years old, because, and I joke about this all the time, some of the dumb stuff that I did between the ages of 16 and 20, and that's the other part of the curse. You get some kids right now that are good kids and they make a mistake, and someone videos and it goes viral, and all of a sudden they're stock tanks. I always believed in the principle, and this is something that I think our coaches taught us, and I've coached with some really, really awesome individuals, and they say it all the time, guys that have played at the highest levels. If you're good enough, they're going to find you. And I think parents have unfortunately caught onto that craze of, I got to make my kids highlight film. I got to hire this recruiting service, all this stuff. And it's, I always say this too, it's your money. Do whatever you want with it. That's fine. But just look at it as something extra. Don't look at it as like the cornerstone of what you're trying to build, because I just think the dark side of it is it leans so much into individualism right now. And it pulls kids so far away from, that team culture. And you see it, man. And you see it at the high school ranks, kids that hop schools now, it makes me sick. And it happens, sometimes it happens for natural reasons, and I get it. But when parents, because of the social media presence and because of this access you have to the kids, sometimes parents make this huge mistake of becoming your kid's agent. And now you're, I understand and I appreciate the concept of, I just want what's best for my kid. I get that. But I feel like they fall into this trap of this fast food thing. Well, I have to have instant gratification. That's what's best for my kid. No, it's not. Absolutely not. What's best for your kid is to grind and to figure it out. And if they end up, blowing up their senior year, that's fantastic. If they don't blow up their senior year and they still love the sport and want to keep playing, there's some place they can go and play and have a positive experience for that. And I think, I think the promotional piece of it and getting eyes on kids and stuff like that, that the social media and things and the highlight films, that does help and gives more access to the kids, and that's great. But the curse of it, man, I just think really kind of screws up what's awesome about high school sports right now. I mean, just even back in our day. Ron, when did you graduate?
I was class of '93 from Cheney.
Right. So like I think about like the legend that was Sylvester Patton. I didn't watch a Sylvester Patton highlight film. I didn't watch I didn't see a tweet with this awesome touchdown clip of Sylvester Patton. I just, in the hallways of my school, it was like, dude, Cheney's got this running back and he is a monster. And then going to the Fitz Cheney game and going, holy crap, like this dude's amazing. You know what I mean? To me, it's just so much more organic. And I think that's what made, the 90s so great. And I miss that today. I think, Ben Gilbert, great example, right? We didn't know anything before we played Lancaster that year. We really know anything about Ben Gilbert, just that they have a really good offensive tackle. And, we've played a lot of really good players. So what's he, and then all of a sudden it's, holy crap, that kid's amazing. So that unfortunately, I think that's gone by the wayside because of this access to social media and highlights, and blessing and a curse. I guess that's the bottom line with that.
Yeah, definitely. Do you so you played under Coach Angle, and that was his last season at Ursuline, right?
Yeah,
and then at that point in time, you transitioned to Wooster. Maybe just give us kind of a brief synopsis of your time at Wooster and what led you there.
Sure. Coach Angle got let go my senior year. Made me pretty bitter at the time. I think I went through a while before I really felt any type of alumni connection to Ursuline, but I did. I mean, I love Ursuline. I love what Coach Reardon's doing there now, and I think it's a fantastic school. It's something the Valley needs for sure. I went to Wooster. I was recruited by a gentleman named Dean Paul, who went on to become the head football coach at Ohio Northern University. Fantastic guy. Recruited me and Sean Conway to go play football at Wooster. My freshman year, came to football camp. Survived. I think a lot of that survival had to do with what I went through at Ursuline. My freshman year, I decided to play offensive line because I thought I'd have a better opportunity to maybe play earlier down the line. We had a lot of seniors, offensive linemen that were getting set to graduate. And then in the off season, between my freshman and sophomore year, Coach Paul had left, and our new defensive coordinator come and talked to me and said, we really would like to see you play defense next year. I was like, sure, I don't care, whatever is best for the team. Made the switch back to defense as a sophomore. Was a backup, kind of rotated in with the senior until about week 8. The other spot, I ended up beating out the guy who was another sophomore. And then senior year, started at defensive tackle there. My senior year was honorable mention all conference. Mike Schmitz was my head coach for part of that. Before him was Jim Barnes, both great guys. I still keep in touch with Coach Schmitz and Coach Barnes a little bit here and there through social media. It was a great experience, and you had that little clip in the beginning of the tradition at the time at Worcester was fantastic. Lining the hill and walking down with the Scottish bagpipes and the marching band and the drummers and everything. It was I remember at the time talking to other guys that went on and played Division II and Division III college football, and they liked it, but they missed playing at Stambaugh Stadium. And I mean, playing at Stambaugh Stadium in Mahoning County, regardless of what school you play for, is amazing. Like I just remember like dudes just going to our games just because, well, what are you doing Friday night? I don't know. We're just gonna go check out the high school football game because that's what Youngstown does, right? And to have that crowd presence, and then to come down to Division III and lose that a little bit, it was tough. But luckily for me, like I ended up at a spot that had a real good football tradition, and made stuff like that with the bagpipes real special. Played at Worcester. Loved my time there. Then I'll share with you a funny story. So 2 years after I graduated college, I stayed in Worcester for a while and ended up playing 3 seasons of semi-pro football. And I'm 23 now. My senior year of Ursuline, I started at guard and defensive end, played both ways. 4 years of college, and then 2 years out of football. Come back to play semi-pro football. I'll never forget our first game. We were playing at Wayndale High School. We were playing this team from Charleston, West Virginia. And I was one of the better linemen. And the coach was like, well, what do you want to play? And I'm like, I could play both ways. I'll be center and D tackle, no problem. And after the first series, like I played offense and we flipped over on defense. Like I was literally like, get me out of the game. And I like threw up all this Gatorade on the side. I ended up playing just offense the rest of the game, got through the game, driving home, had to pull over on the freeway to throw up more Gatorade. And just thinking to myself, like, dude, I'm 23. Like this was 6 years ago. I was able to go both ways and I can't do that anymore. But yeah, Father Time is undefeated, man. That's all I got to say about that. But so Worcester was great. Really glad I ended up there. I stuck around in Wayne County for about a decade. I had a privilege of coaching at West Salem Northwestern High School for 2 years, football and volunteer wrestling. Then my best friend, Sean Conway, got the job at Ashland Crestview High School, and I coached with him for 2 years and volunteered on their wrestling staff. And then in 2007, I came back and coached 1 year of college football at Wooster, which was the most fun I've ever had in coaching. I graduated in 2001, so 6 years removed. All the kids on the team aren't people that were there when I was there, but head football coach is still the guy that coached me. And then our defensive staff were my teammates. Our defensive coordinator was a guy that played middle linebacker with me. He was a 3-time All-American. Our secondary coach was a guy that came in as a freshman, whose older brother I graduated with. His older brother was offensive line coach. So, yeah, 2006, coached at Wooster. We went 8-2. It was a lot of fun. Really taught me a lot of different things that I really took for granted at that point in my coaching career. How to study film. That 1 year alone taught me more about film study than I had in the 5 previous years coaching. And I think if I had not made that pit stop on my journey, I wouldn't have appreciated what it's like to really break down an opponent using huddle. And then finally in 2007, left Worcester and ended up landing in Columbus and gone from there.
So I have 2 questions. Number one, either as a player or as a coach, did they initiate you at Wooster having to wear the kilt?
Actually, no. And I'll be honest with you, like only the marching band was allowed to wear kilts. Like I begged for a kilt, man. I wanted a kilt so bad. My favorite pro wrestler of all time is Roddy Piper. I wanted to wear the kilt around campus. They wouldn't let me. Instead, I had to join the marching band to get a kilt. I was pretty salty about that. So.
And then wrestling. Did you wrestle at Ursuline?
Yeah, so I wrestled for 3 years at Ursuline. I was terrible.
Okay.
I was awful. My freshman year, I won 2 matches. I beat the same kid twice at 2 different tournaments. My sophomore year, they actually canceled our wrestling program. And a kid by the name of Matt Brickley.
Yes.
Brickley. Matt Brickley and myself wanted to keep wrestling. And so Coach Angle hooked us up. Every day after school, I got in Brickley's car and we drove to Canfield High School and practiced over there for an entire season. Stacy Madison was the head coach of Canfield back there, phenomenal coach, opened his room up to us. But what was weird, I wrestled that whole season with Coach Madison ended up getting us into 1 JV tournament that they hosted. So I only wrestled 2 matches all year. I was 2-0, and then and because they're JV matches, they don't count. So worked hard that whole season, went to sectionals at Rootstown High School, me and Brickley, and this was the last year that OHSA allowed this too. Matt and I were each other's coaches. We had no adults with us whatsoever. My family didn't even come. My family was super supportive of me playing football and were at all my football games. They only came to 1 wrestling match my entire life. And so at Rootstown, I coached Matt Brickley. Matt Brickley coached me. We both lost. We were done. He was graduating. And then my junior year, I was like, dude, I don't have anybody to drive to Canfield with. So I'm just going to hang out with Coach Smith in the weight room and lift weights. And then my senior year, Dan Liebert was a new math teacher at Ursuline who was an assistant wrestling coach at Fitch. And he wanted to restart the program. And I met him. He's a great dude. I'm really, really thankful that he showed up because I probably would have never stepped on a wrestling mat again. And wrestling has really impacted my life. But yeah, he restarted the program. We had to use scraps of wrestling mat. Like we didn't even have a full wrestling mat. Like Jim Mon, I think, sold our wrestling mats, so like we had to go behind the concession stand and peel off these like old crusty doilies and like lay them down in the cafeteria. Wrestled that year. I think I was like 17-6. I won a couple matches at sectionals, but didn't qualify for districts. And played football at Wooster. And it's really funny because like growing up, like football was my main thing, and wrestling was kind of just the side thing that I liked, but I really wasn't that serious about. And I talk to my kids now because we basically have 3 types of wrestlers in our program. We have some kids that have been wrestling since they were born, and they're really good, and that's all they do. Then we have other kids that are multi-sport athletes, and mainly because I coach football, I've been able to talk a lot of them to come to wrestling. And those kids, I was like, this will make you a better football player, and it inevitably it does. I had one kid, our starting free safety, a couple years back at Watterson, came out just his junior year to wrestle. And then his senior year had a great year. Did not come back up for wrestling his senior year, and tells people to this day all the time is like, the weight room and wrestling my junior year is what made me a really good defensive football player. Just being able to basically practice tackling in a different sport. But yeah, 17-6 my senior year at Ursuline, played college football. And then it wasn't until I started coaching my first job at Northwestern that the wrestling coach there, a guy by the name of Spencer Hershey, while I was student teaching, was just like, hey man, it's not even a real position. Like, do you care to volunteer and just come in our room and wrestle with our heavyweights sometimes? I'm like, sure. And that rekindled my love for the sport. And then that is actually right around 2004 is when I got in MMA. I found a gym in Ashland, Ohio called Rec Room Athletics. Had a couple pro guys training out of there. I started going there. Actually, I got to take one step back. This is a funny story. So I want to get into fighting, which my family thought I was crazy because my sister, if Ron, she's closer to your age. She graduated from Cheney in '87, but my sister was notorious for just being like one of those West Side scrappers. Like she got in so many fistfights growing up, got her nose broken so many times. And then when I went to Ursuline, in the late '90s, a lot of my teachers and some of my coaches knew my sister, and they would be like, "You're Cindy Cataline's brother?" I'm like, "Yeah." It's like, "But you're so nice. Like you've never been in a fight before. What are you doing?" So when so like me and her, like if anybody was going to get MMA, it was probably her. So when I got into fighting, a lot of, especially my family, were like, "You're not really a violent person." And for me, it was the sport of it. So anyways, I found this gym in Ashland, Ohio. It was called the House of Pain. And I was there for about 6 weeks. And it was just like a little hole in the wall, like in a shopping mall center. I started training kickboxing there. And the teacher at the time, a guy by the name of Rusty Huffman, got me a fight. And it was going to be a kickboxing matchup in Sandusky, Ohio. And a week before the fight is supposed to happen, the gym closes. So like I got, the last week of training camp, I got nowhere to train. And Rusty's like, "Don't worry about it. I'm going to bring you to this other gym across town." And drove me across basically like 5 minutes away, this gym called Rec Room Athletics. So I was at this place called the House of Pain, which was a nice gym. And then I like graduated by default to like a real MMA gym. Like there were some tough dudes in there that were punching each other in the face and laughing about it. And, so I ended up at this place, Rec Room Athletics. This family owned it, Truckovich family. Matt Truckovich was the head coach there. And a week later, I meet at the gym and drive up to Sandusky, and I get in the car, and I'm 0-0, and I'm supposed to be fighting another guy that's 0-0. And I get in the backseat of Matt's car, and he goes, "I got good news and bad news. What do you want?" And I go, I guess the bad news? The guy that you're supposed to fight today is sick, and he's not fighting. So they matched you up with the returning state amateur heavyweight champion. And I'm like, "What?" He's like, yeah. But ask me about the good news. And I'm like, "What's the good news?" He's like, "I got a plan." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "That's the good news. I got a plan. You're going to be fine." And I'm like, "What do you mean I'm going to be fine?" Drive all the way up to Sandusky. Man, this was 2005. The War on the Shore, it was called, this kickboxing event. And I'm sitting in the back dressing room. At this point in my life, I've been in 2 fights in my entire life. I did a tough man boxing competition a couple years earlier where I fought like some really fat slobs that fell off a bar stool. Like it wasn't like that big a deal. And then and now I'm sitting in this dressing room, like getting ready to go out to fight. And I'm sitting next to this guy, and this guy's like, "It's your first fight?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man." He's like, "You're in the main event and it's your first fight?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm pretty nervous." He's like, "Don't worry, dude, you'll be fine." He's giving me all these pointers and everything. And I'm like, "Okay, cool." And he goes out to fight right before intermission. 30 seconds into his bout, he gets knocked completely unconscious. And I'm just sitting there, I'm like, so the dude that's giving me advice about how I'm going to survive tonight is getting carried out in a stretcher right now. So I'm totally losing my mind. Luckily, the coach I had at the time, Matt Truckovich, great guy, his game plan was basically this: you're going to punch him as hard as you can, and when he gets close to him, you're just going to grab him and wrestle him. I'm like, okay, I can do that. And dude had really long arms. I ended up losing a split decision. Did really well, but that was the whole fight. Like, I'd punch him, and when he got close enough, I would just bear hug him. And I'm sure the audience did not like it, but I survived and didn't die. So yeah. But anyways, talking about wrestling, yeah, that's what rekindled my love for the sport, was getting in MMA. I trained at Rec Room Athletics for a couple years, and when I moved down to Columbus in 2007, I was a team member of Buckeye MMA, which was a gym down here for a while. It ended up getting absorbed by Ronin Fight Gym, which is over in Grandview Heights. Fought from the age of 25 to 35, finished a record of 8-6, and just focused on wrestling because I have the worst reach in the world. I'm 5'9". I have a ginormous head, so I'm an easy target to punch. And yeah, ended up having a great time. But through MMA, really started to love wrestling. Had some really great opportunities. The principal at the time when I taught at South High School, Dr. Janetta Wiley, she saw the value in having a wrestling program. So we started the wrestling program at South. I was there for 6 years, then moved on to West High School, took over a job from a great guy, Scott Nicola, took that job over, was there for 6 years. And then my last year at West High School, two twin brothers, Matthew and Dawson Shaw, were able to get them to the state tournament. And they're two of like maybe 8 guys in school history that have ever qualified for state. And had a great year. And a couple weeks later, got a magical phone call from a gentleman representing Bishop Watterson, and the rest is basically history. So, yeah.
I got a question about, just listening to some of that pathway and that trajectory, floating between the two sports and the mentality and the mindset that goes along with taking on those challenges. So the first half of my question is, when it comes to football, player, coach, what have you, what's been like your most difficult days with the sport of football? And then, in having those types of adversities, as you mentioned earlier, what wills you to keep going on and moving to that next level, challenging yourself in areas that you may not have had a lot of experience with? And then how have you been able to apply that to, the levels of coaching that you've experienced, and then the different environments where you've coached? Because, when you and we both have experience coaching in the Columbus City League, and we know the challenges that comes with some of that. And then you have some experience coaching at Watterson, or places where there's a little bit more resource, a little bit more enthusiasm and numbers, so, when you think about your trajectory and the things that appeal to you, what is it about those experiences that kind of interweave throughout your coaching experience, and being willing to go into those different spaces where other people would shy away from some of that stuff?
No, that's a great question. I say all the time, my first 12 years down here in Columbus, coaching at South and coaching at West, it's really the bedrock of my coaching career. I love coaching at South and coaching at West. I still stay in touch with a lot of my players. But the lessons it taught me, like being at Watterson has been a great experience, but I'm not the coach I am at Watterson if it wasn't for my experiences at West and South. And you bring up resources, and I think that's a really, really good example. We have a lot more resources access at Watterson than we do at those schools. That's true. But what's even more than that, my time at West and South, I probably spent 10% of it coaching wrestling and football. The other 90%, I was a mentor. And I mean, I was a parent. And to be quite blunt, I was a parent to a lot of these kids. A lot of absentee dads. A lot of families just didn't really care, didn't have a lot of interest in what their kids were doing. Which, when I would come across a family that was invested in their child's life, I would treasure that and treat them like gold. But moving on now and being at Watterson, when I'm in certain spaces where I hear some complaints about, we don't have this or we don't have that, or this struggle or that struggle. There's struggles and challenges everywhere, but the toughest job is coaching in the inner city. And there's nothing close to it. Like, I don't care what anybody says, and even in my current situation, I do have some challenges that are hard, but I have been through much worse. And it also taught me lessons of what is the real value in coaching. A lot of people get into coaching, right? Because there is a glamorous side to it. It's cool. Winning's fun. Winning championships, city titles, state titles, conference titles, all that stuff is great. But the real reason you're supposed to get into coaching is to mentor young athletes and help them in the game of life more than football or wrestling or anything like that. And I feel like if I had not gone through my times at South and West High School, I wouldn't appreciate that to the level that I do right now. I also think, my time at South was probably the hardest of my coaching career, hands down. West was a little bit of a resurgence for me. But I came to South. I was an assistant coach my first 2 years, and then my third year I got thrown into being the head coach, and I did that for 3 seasons. And I joke with Dallas when I see him all the time, like that's around the same time he was at Struthers, and the two of us sometimes random phone calls of just like counseling sessions, pretty much of the nonsense that we would have to go through at the time. And I remember walking into that situation, having an idea of what it takes to be good and to build a football program, and having that idea completely shattered because, and this is, I think, a common mistake a lot of coaches make, one size does not fit all in coaching. And that was my mistake. I felt like the lessons I learned at Wooster, the lessons I learned at Ursuline, the experiences I had at small farm schools like Ashton Crestview and Wesleyan Northwestern, and these winning programs that I've played for and came from, that I was just going to copy and paste what was done there, do it at South, and we were going to be fine. And I've had to come back around to some of my former athletes and apologize for some of the dumb stuff I said and did, and the way I acted, because at the time I thought, I'm 28 years old, and I think, just yell more, that'll do it, just yell. And man, I was stupid, and honestly, I hurt my own health, I think, for a little bit too. My first year as head coach, we were 2-8 at South. My second year, we were 1-9. Last year was 0-10, and that last year 0-10, man, really sucked because we had a great group of kids, and I just wanted them to experience victory just one time. And when we didn't, I took that really, really hard personally, like I had failed them. But coming from that experience, and in a lot of ways, it was trial and error, right? Figured out what not to do. Then I went to West High School. When I got to West, Mike Flushy was the head coach. He named me defensive coordinator. I was the coach that was in the building, so I handled a lot of head coaching duties. But that 6 years was great because I'm coming out of a situation where I'm questioning whether or not I should be coaching anymore. West was predominantly like a 500 team. And Flushy and I, we still kind of joke about this. So I came in still kind of the hard ass, like tough, raw, the Joe Nora. I was basically trying to be Joe Nora Dallas for a little bit. I was just trying to yell people into submission and get them to be great by yelling at them. And not that Joe yelled all the time. I love you, Joe, if you're listening.
He did.
Yeah, he did. So I was still kind of like this more stringent hard ass, and Mike was the complete opposite of me. And I remember that first season, we kind of met in the middle on a couple things, and it was really good for me to see, like, our program needs to have rules and expectations, but we also need to understand where our athletes are. And if you get a kid that comes into your football program, one, has never played football before, like basically just in a parking lot, has never signed up for a little league because their family just didn't have the resources or didn't take the initiative to do it. And two, if you're dealing with a young athlete that's from a broken home or from a hard home, if they can't meet your expectation, that doesn't mean you erase your expectations. That means maybe just understand where the kid's coming from a little bit. And that first year at West, that really taught me that, because Flushy was great at that. and building from there and understanding, you know, what I want what's best for my athletes, and sometimes what's best for my athletes is just loving on them, when they mess up, not always jumping their ass. And I think that was something that really caused me to grow as a coach. And we ended up taking that and running with it. And 2016 was the first team in school history to qualify for the state playoffs. We had a phenomenal year that year. The only team we lost to that year was Eastmore in a great game. I think it was like 28 or 21-17 was the final. Finished 9-1. Then we had New Albany first round of the playoffs. Ended up losing them, I think 28-7 or 28-0. But that was a great year, and that whole experience at West High School. To your question, Ron, I think really, if it wasn't for that, I'm not a good coach. And I even right now, I think I'm an okay coach. Like I could be a lot better, but I lean on those experiences and those life lessons, like I did when I was 17 years old, and the things that Ursuline was teaching me. I'm going to be at Waterson for a while. I think I could see myself maybe eventually at the end of my teaching career ending back up at West. It's a great place. And yeah, if it wasn't for that time at South and West of really refining me and making me understand that the reason you coach is to help kids in life. If you win games, that's great. But just as long as you're teaching them how to do things the right way, and it might take a year or two for them to figure out how to do things the right way. But as long as you get them there, that's all that matters.
I think that's a great point, right? So and I can attest to my own experience, right? If you don't take those losses of tough experiences of being a head coach, in your situation, you're reflecting on the things that maybe you could have done better at South as the guy, and now search back 20 minutes ago in this podcast, you're talking about having the opportunity to win a state title as a head wrestling coach.
Mm-hmm.
I think that attests to the development of your approach, the things you've learned, the maturity.
Yeah.
Right. And from my standpoint, if I didn't take certain losses in my life, I wouldn't have learned the lessons that I need to learn to be where I am. And I think that's some of the missing thing with today's society is that sometimes you got to lose, and sometimes you got to punt and take a knee and learn, and so that you can get better. And that's an important part of this journey, to be able to propel us to bigger things. Like everything's not a win, everything's not a highlight film. It's not always easy.
Yeah.
You don't just show up and win.
Right.
You don't.
And what is win? And I'll even stretch that. What does winning look like?
Right.
I mean, that's something that I think, I've talked with Coach Engel a couple times in my adult years, and he always says, like, winning is just, not his exact words, but the concept basically is winning is just getting better. If your football team's supposed to be 2-8 and you end up going 4-6, you won. If you're trying to crack the varsity lineup and maybe, you end up being a backup, but you made your team better from the scout team, you won. And my time at South and West really refined that in me. And it's just an appreciation too. Going back to Ron's question, like, especially in Central Ohio, I feel like sometimes not very justified, but I feel like city sports definitely gets a bad rap and gets looked down upon. And every once in a while, some coach will do something stupid, and I'll hear, "Oh, that's just a city league," and that's sad because like those people are perpetuating that belief when they do something stupid. But I just know in my time, man, like I can't speak highly enough of my time coaching in Columbus City Schools and what it taught me to be the coach that I am today. And some of the guys I coached against, like Jim Miranda, head football coach at East. There was a time where he hated me. I still joke about this a little bit. Here's a funny story. Ron, you'll appreciate this. So my first or second year at South, I can't remember. I'm a young, stupid coach. And we're supposed to trade tapes. This is before Huddle, so we're still doing DVDs. And the league rule, I can't remember what it was. It's like you're supposed to trade game film from like 2 weeks before. And so I send our scout over with our DVD to Eastmore. And then my guy comes back and he's like, hey, they gave me his film, but he doesn't want the film where we have. He wants our game against Walnut Ridge. And I was like, well, that's not the league rule. Like, it's supposed to be 2 weeks before. And he's like, well, he just said, he wants Coach Miranda wants the film from Walnut Ridge. So I just said, well, no. And then their AD emailed us and I said, no, he's not getting it. And it became this big thing because I was a very stubborn, stupid young coach. And I'll never forget. And we're bad, right? We're Eastmore is, they got some real dudes playing on the team. I think that was Isaiah P's senior year. And we go out there, get the ball, march it down like maybe 30 yards. I had a soccer player kicking for us. He makes like a 25-yard field goal. We're up 3-0, and you'd have thought we won the Super Bowl, right? 7 minutes left in the first quarter. We're up 3-0. Like, we're going to do this. Yeah, we're going to do this, like story, Friday Night Lights kind of feel. Final score, 84-3. And I'll never forget, like, the end of the season, the all head coaches meeting. We're sitting there, and I can't remember if it was Vince Clarino's first year as director or if this was the guy before him. I don't know. But anyways, we get the meeting started. It's all the head coaches and whoever the director was. I think it might have been Vince. But he said, hey, Coach Miranda had something he wants to say. And Miranda says, I just want to say, I know we got rules and stuff, but, common courtesy, veteran coaches asking you younger coaches to, for favors and stuff like that, just be a little more open-minded. Because, we don't want to be dropping 80, blah, blah, blah. And it's just real long, awkward silence because everybody in the room knows he's talking about me. And I just leaned forward in my chair and I raised my hand. I was like, I got it, coach. Thanks. We're good. And everybody just started laughing. Yeah. But, that's a funny story. But I have all the respect in the world for Jim Miranda. I think he's a great coach. Brian Heffley is a really good friend of mine. He was the head coach at Marion Franklin for quite some time, and he's the assistant coach at Pick Central now. But I hated Brian when I coached, because they're right in our backyard, and all the best athletes would transfer from South to Marion Franklin. And I just remember, like, he was my Ivan Drago of Rocky IV. Like, I wanted to punch this dude in the mouth as hard as I could. And years later, like, he literally comes over to my house a couple times a year to play poker, and we joke about it. Just the success they had at our expense. But yeah, there's so many awesome guys that have come through and coached in the City League. Byron Maddox, Walnut Ridge, Lou Carter. I love Lou. I think Lou's a fantastic guy. And the time he was at East, and it's sad because I know I'm nowhere near as good a coach as I am if it wasn't for that experience in Columbus City. And I wish more people that don't coach in the City League or don't know about the City League would have more respect and more appreciation of what the coaches do and the challenges that they face, because those challenges are just on another level. Everything that I've ever had to deal with at Watterson holds a very tiny candle to the challenges I had at South and West High School. And I wish more people appreciated that and what those coaches do there.
One of the things you mentioned was the restructuring of some of the leagues in the state of Ohio, specifically the Catholic League. Do you want to touch on a little bit of that I think 2026?
Yeah. So 2026, the Ohio Catholic League Ohio Catholic Conference is going to be going. This has been something that's been around, like been working on for like a decade. I've been at Watterson for 7 years, and I remember my first year there were conversations about trying to make some type of super Catholic conference, mainly for football, but hopefully for other sports. Its initial inception was going to be the Columbus Catholic schools and the Dayton Catholic schools, Chaminade, Julienne, Bishop Fenwick, a couple other schools like that. We even did crossover games with them for like a year or two, and then that went away. And then the next iteration of it was going to be the Toledo Catholic schools and us. And then that went away. So I thought it was dead in the water. And then literally like 2 months ago, Brian Kennedy, our head football coach, texted our staff and was like, this is happening. And I'm like, really? And then we talked on the phone for a while. And it's pretty awesome. I'll be honest with you, from a scheduling standpoint for football, it's a huge blessing because, finding games at Watterson's hard now, especially since we've had a good couple years. And I know Hartley has had that struggle. I know DeSales has had that struggle. So being in an actual conference now with weeks, 4 through 10 booked, and now you only have to find non-league games for weeks 1, 2, and 3. It's just going to be so awesome for us. The other side of that I think is going to be great is that's a tough schedule, man. I mean, if you can survive that regular season and be injury free, if you can get through that healthy, and even if you took some losses along the way, if you come out of that league play and you're 6-4 or 7-3, but you're healthy, for some of the schools that really can propel your momentum in the playoffs. And the way it spreads out too, I think you got Walsh Jesuit and DeSales, Division II, Cleveland St. Joe's, us, Hartley, I think it's Division III now. Akron St. V's, I think, might be Division II, and then you got Mooney. Mooney's like D4 now, I think, right?
Yeah.
And then Ursuline's D3, I think, and we're all spread out in different regions. You're going to roll into the playoffs, and weeks 1, 2, and 3 in the playoffs, you're going to be smashing people because you're used to playing these huge marquee games against these really, really good programs, and you're going to come in and play. And I'll be honest with you, and I'm not trying to throw shade at teams in our region. We do play in a pretty tough region, but the last couple of years, we've seen some teams that are 10-0 and just get smoked in the regional semifinals, and you start to question who are they playing, right? That's something that I would push really hard when I coached at West. Is like, we were up against Walnut Ridge, Eastmore Academy, Marion Franklin when they were really, really good, and I would tell our kids like, hey man, if you could just hang with these guys, like that means we can beat Lyndon McKinley, that means we can beat Centennial, that means we can hang with Independence and Briggs and stuff like that. But I think that really helps. But again, as long as you can stay healthy, if you can get through those conference schedules healthy, I think it's going to have a profound impact on the playoffs. And yeah, I could see years where we have multiple state champions out of that conference for sure. So exciting times for sure.
And then lastly, before we kind of wrap this up, what are you doing now, Coach Cat?
So Ron, I don't know if Dallas has clued you in, but I'm a fan of professional wrestling, and I liked wrestling in college when it was Stone Cold and The Rock, but I'm old school. I'm Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, and Roddy Piper. And much to the chagrin of my wife, I shameless plug, I have the greatest wife in the world. She told me if I didn't sleep that I was sleeping on the couch tonight. But I did the MMA thing, and I always like to have a hobby. And right when we came out of lockdown of COVID, I found a professional wrestling school down here, and I got trained at the Ohio Pro Wrestling Academy, OPWA, led by James Avery. He was a guy that's been wrestling for 30 years. Fantastic teacher, and signed up there. Went through like a couple month training to be a pro wrestler, and the week before I was going to be a graduate, I ended up tearing my Achilles tendon. Doing a practice match with somebody, had surgery, and but still stuck around. I would still go to pro wrestling classes, and while I was recovering from the Achilles tear, they let me be a manager. So I was trying to channel my inner Bobby Heenan and Jim Cornette and running around like a fool in every VFW in Ohio. Yeah, but it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. So Dallas has been following my pro wrestling career, and I wondered if he was going to make me talk about it. But yeah, I wrestled.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. I love your promos.
Yeah. So the original gimmick idea when I went to pro wrestling school was I was going to be like an aerobics instructor. And I did a couple promos of that, and they were really funny, right? I was the fat aerobics instructor, really, really funny. But my teachers, they looked at me and they were like, "Why are you doing this gimmick?" And I'm like, "I don't know." It's like, "Aren't you a coach?" I'm like, "Yeah." It's like, "Just be a coach." And then that's how Coach Cat was born. I'm the stereotypical 1985 PE football coach. Those shorts that they wore in the 80s, those really, really, yeah.
The bike shorts.
The bike shorts. I scoured the internet, and they still make them somewhere up in Minnesota. And I bought 5 pairs, and that's a part of my ring gear now. But yeah, I'm Coach Cat, and my next match is going to be on September 14th in Newark, Ohio. I am wrestling a gentleman called The Baker. So it's going to be Coach Cat versus The Baker. My mantra is diabetes will not defeat us, because The Baker is trying to fatten up all our kids with sweets and cakes and cookies. And the PE health teacher I am, I do not want him to poison the youth with his diabetes. So yeah, Coach Cat's going to take out the Baker on September 14th because diabetes will not defeat us. And yeah, if Dallas has got all my YouTube and socials and stuff, so if you could share that, Dallas, that'd be good. Find me on Twitter, Coach Cat. Yeah, and I got a Facebook page too. It's pretty funny.
So Ron, were you a fan of Mike Tyson's Punch Out?
Absolutely.
There's a video of a guy on a bike. You remember the Little Mac video, right? When he's chasing the guy on the bike.
When Little Mac is training, you would beat a guy. You'd beat a guy, and then Little Mac would be running down the street, and Doc was his name. Would be riding the bicycle.
He reenacted it.
I reenacted.
That's my favorite.
And that's my favorite one.
And for every lineman, well, because every lineman, you got the fat man jog, right? You got the fat man freaking just basically moving your shoulders and your hips, but you're really not moving anywhere.
No,
it is.
Not at all.
You got to check it out. If you like wrestling and the shtick that it is, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm glad. Like I said, my wife is a saint. She lets me do some fun stuff. If you go on YouTube and do @CoachCatWrestling, you could be my 7th subscriber. I have 6 subscribers right now. So if you go on YouTube, subscribe to @CoachCatWrestling. I didn't even know I had 6 subscribers. I just looked it up right now. And if you do that, you will see a couple of my matches, a couple of my promos. The promo that Dallas is referring to is in there somewhere. I'm every once in a while I'm the good guy, but mostly I'm the bad guy. So have fun checking that out. Coach Cat Wrestling on YouTube, and I'm on X and Facebook too. So have fun, check it out. And diabetes will not defeat us. You want me to cut a promo right now, Baker?
Absolutely.
September 14th, I'm gonna knock your teeth out because diabetes will not defeat us. There you go.
We got our clip.
There it is.
We wrap this up with one question that kind of summarizes a little bit of what we've been talking about. So if you had one more down, I want you to describe what that situation would be and who would be with you.
Okay. Wow, that's a big one. All right. If I had one more down, I would be in Standby Stadium playing Mooney and stopping them from scoring touchdowns, and I'd be with you and Wolford and Frasco and Conway and Penny and Eccles and all those guys, and I think that's the biggest thing is, like, regardless of the outcome, it's just the memories that we made back then. If I had one more down, I'd be in the green and gold under the Friday night lights at Standby Stadium playing with the guys I grew up with and met in high school. So that's what I would do.
Well, appreciate it, Felix. And, it's always good to see guys you grew up with and know as young men and kind of get to see them be professionals and making a difference with kids. And for me, right, being in a coaching, teaching profession, I appreciate what you do and the difference that you're making. And I know it's not easy, but, the insight that you have, the perspective that you have, the thought that you put into it, I appreciate. So I want to say thanks for doing this. And I wish you nothing but the best.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate you. Ron, it was great to meet you. I hope to run into you down here in Columbus.
Absolutely. Listening to your journey, it comes across very clear that you don't take things for granted, because you're able to look back and admit to the areas that you may have been able to do better at that point. You appreciate the kids that, you have the chance to influence and mentor. And then it's not about just wins and losses for you, so that's the sign of a person that really cares. And, for someone who's impacting youth, that's a hallmark that you have to have, because, these guys are going to go on to be men. They're going to have families. They're going to be fathers. And, you'll probably have a season where you start to get guys that you coach, yelled at, pushed, motivated along so many years ago, begin to return to show their appreciation to you for some of the most minuscule things that allowed them to see a pathway and a vision for themselves. So, I appreciate your candor and your ability to be transparent and really take us along that ride with you of what it is to grow as a person, a man, and a coach and an individual. So I appreciate all the sentiments that you laid out for us tonight. It was awesome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys.